Hey guys, insight number 5. I'm going to try and sneak in an extra bonus at the end of this because I really like that point as well. But we're still looking at the same scriptures. So it's Exodus 15, 23 to 26, 16, 1 to 15, and 17, 1 to 7. So that's the waters at Marah, the manna from heaven, and then the water out of the rock situation, where they all the Israelites were all like, moany, complaining, whingy to Moses, and Moses is like, seriously, have you forgotten that the Lord has miracles everywhere and performs them again and yet takes care of them? So it's kind of just this whole learning process of trusting in the Lord, and they know who the Lord is better now because they've just seen all these things happen in Egypt. They've got out, but they're still just lost and afraid and scared, and it causes irrational thinking. We talked about that in insight number 4. So it's not like all of them are complaining. It's just overwhelming. They've lived in Egypt all their life with the aqueducts and everything, like the cattle right there, and now they're kind of like, what are we supposed to do? So what was the Lord teaching the Israelites in the way he provided manna? This is a good question. So this is gather only what you need. Remember, this came down every morning. They were told it would be every morning except for the day before the Sabbath, in which they could gather enough for the Sabbath, because he wasn't going to provide it on the Sabbath. Sabbath is a day of rest. So it's so hard when we want to store for the future, right? Because we're told to store for the future, and these people even too wanted to store for the future. Yet the manna they collected, if they collected more than they needed, it would get worms and go gross and go off really quickly. So it was a lesson to take only what you need. Now the Lord really in this day and age wants us to prepare, wants us to gather more than we need right now so that we have our needs covered for the future. But in this particular instance, the lesson was only gather what you need. Why? Why, you ask? He's teaching the Israelites that they can trust and rely on him to provide. This was the lesson in trusting the Lord daily, that they could know that when they woke up, there would be manna out there that they could eat. So this is the lesson in trusting the Lord daily. This is what they needed to learn. He is teaching that he will show up, provide, and not leave you wanting. He will fill you until you are full, if you let him, right? Now, Elder Neil A. Maxwell, he said, whatever the scale of things, the Lord is there. And he would know. He went through some mighty hard times. Whatever the scale of things, the Lord is there. Now my bonus, because I got through that one pretty good, is over in 17:15. Now this is when they start fighting Amalek, and Moses holds up his hands, which you can't see, holds up his hands, starts getting tired. They put a rock under him so he can sit down. But as long as his hands are up, they start to win this fight against Amalek. Remember, these aren't fighters, these aren't warriors, these aren't an army, these are just people that were slaves building. These are like builders, they're not, they've got some in them, but not really. They were taught, and it was whipped out of them to not fight back, right? Because they're slaves in Egypt. So, yeah, this was hard. So as long as God was with them, and God was only with them when Moses had his hands in the air, praying over them. Now, if you ever tried to hold your hands in the air for a while, it's incredibly difficult. So yeah, after a while, Aaron and Hur, I think his name is, which is his brother-in-law? Yeah, brother-in-law. So, it's his brother-in-law. They put a rock so he can sit down, and then they actually hold his arms up, so that he can keep that up, which is really cool. And then they prevail in that battle. But this is part of leadership. Can't just do this by himself. He needs support. And this shows up in next week more. You'll see Jethro turn up with Zipporah and their sons, and Jethro, being wise and having lived nomadically in the desert for his entire life, has some really great advice for Moses on how to actually run the people of Israel so that they don't fall into these situations and that they can continue learning, even though again it takes 40 years. But how to organize them and everything, because it's just really cool. So we'll get into that next week, because that's really awesome that Jethro shows up and does that. So leadership needs support, whether it's advice from higher up or from those around you, or those that you serve. leadership needs support. So in this instance, they not only provided a seat for Moses, but they literally held his hands up. So what are you doing to support your leadership? Or are you being a whinging, complaining, you didn't provide everything for us instantly like we needed it? So think about that leadership does need support. What can you do? Are you supporting your leadership? Are you giving them help, or are you trying to tear them down? Because they're just human too, and they have issues, and they are learning. Moses was learning here. He didn't know how to do this. He was learning as he went, and it's tough. You go try and lead 600,000 plus people in the desert. See how you go, right? So I always think about people complaining about the chorister. Oh, they didn't do it right. And I'm like, well, you want to get up and do that? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, then shush, right? And you think people complain about the bishop. I'm like, oh, do you want to be the bishop? They're like, no. And I'm like, well, then don't criticize, right? It's so hard to fall into that trap, though. It's so hard to criticize a leader. And I have in the past. And it's not a good feeling. And I would not recommend doing it or getting caught in that. Don't do that. They're human. They need support. You don't have to be their best friend. Maybe you don't get on that well. They're just not your kind of person, perhaps. They're not the bishop for you at this time of your life, maybe even. But they're still your bishop. They really do care about you. They really do. It might not seem like it, but they do. So give them a break. Give them support. Maybe write them a nice letter. Maybe your branch president or your bishop or your young ones president or someone. Just write them a nice thank you note. Because leadership needs support. Now, at the end of all this, though, in 15, Moses built an altar and called the name of it Jehovah Nisi, which is the Lord is my banner. And so, yeah, what's on your banner? Like, really, what's on your banner? What are you waving to the world? And saying you're singing and dancing in gratitude. What else are you doing? So what's on your banner? And I sort of thought about this, and I'm like, because Emily Freeman suggests this, because she did this whole banner up, and she wrote down, she put on there for her, she put fight, heal, full, F-U-L-L, and fill, F-I-L-L, because he will fill you up and fill you up. Both have slightly different meanings, and he does both. And then be among us, prevail, and deliver. So that's what she put, and I thought that was really cool. But I wanted a sentence on mine, so I went with, and I'm going to draw this up, so I'll put that up too if I actually get it done. But what's on my banner as a Christian would be, the Lord is my light, then why should I fear? Because the Lord is my light. And you can see that picture behind me, it says carry the light of Christ. I'm all about that. I'm all about being light, reflecting that light of Christ and just beaming it to everyone that needs it. The Lord is my light. The Lord is my glory. I glory in him. He is everything. He is my strength, my song, everything. The Lord is my light. Then why should I fear? ? Right? I shouldn't fear. I shouldn't act irrationally out of fear, because the Lord is my light and he will prevail. And I need to remember that more often. That's why it needs to be on my banner. All right. That's us for this week. I really hope you've enjoyed it. Next week's really good too, and it's just more about lessons learnt in the desert before the promised land. And there's some good ones. So we'll see you there for that. Stay safe out there. COVID in New Zealand's hitting peaks, but overseas it's just all sorts of stuff all over the place, right? So the whole world's in my prayers basically, but some of you I pray for by name, but I just generally, anyone that watches me and supports me, I thank you, and I hope that I've uplifted and strengthened you in some way this week, because I do prayerfully select these points. All right, stay safe out there, you guys. I'll catch you next week. See ya.